We often think attraction is something loud, something you declare, display, or perform. But the truth is, the most captivating people don't shout for attention. They don't rely on surface level charm. They don't need to chase validation. They become attractive in silence, through habits, through intention, and through the way they carry themselves when no one's watching. Silent attractiveness is not about manipulating perception. It's about cultivating substance. It's about embodying principles that draw people in without a single word spoken. The first habit is self-awareness. People who are silently attractive know who they are. They're in tune with their values, their limits, their aspirations. This isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity. When someone owns their strengths and admits their weaknesses without shame, it creates an unspoken invitation for others to be real too. And in a world full of filters, that kind of honesty is magnetic. The second is being a good listener. Not hearing to respond, but listening to understand. Silently attractive people have an energy that makes others feel heard. They don't interrupt. They don't hijack the conversation. They lean in, not with their ego, but with curiosity. And people remember that because being seen and heard is rare, and anyone who offers it becomes unforgettable. Third, they practice emotional restraint. They don't explode, gossip, or overshare. Their energy is calm, composed. In conflict, they seek clarity, not chaos. They respond rather than react. And that calmness, it radiates strength. In fact, in difficult situations, people instinctively turn toward them, not away, because emotional maturity is a silent beacon of trust. Then there's the habit of consistency. They don't shift based on the room they walk into. They don't wear a different face for every crowd. Whether it's how they treat the waiter or the CEO, it's the same. That consistency builds credibility. It creates a foundation that says, you can rely on me. And nothing is more attractive than someone who means what they say and lives what they believe. Another key habit is being driven by purpose. They're not drifting. They're not chasing the next shiny thing. They're building something, even if it's quietly. They read, they work on themselves. They say no to distractions. Purpose doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're committed to the journey. And that kind of passion, even if it's subtle, naturally pulls people in because it signals depth. And depth creates emotional gravity. Silently attractive people also speak with intention. They don't talk to fill the space. When they do speak, their words matter. Whether it's offering encouragement, asking a thoughtful question, or expressing gratitude, they don't waste breath. That intentionality earns respect because silence followed by substance hits harder than constant noise. They also carry themselves with good posture and body language. It's not arrogance, it's presence. Shoulders back, eye contact steady, movements deliberate. Even in a crowded room, they stand out not because they're flashy, but because they exude a grounded presence. Their body speaks confidence without saying a word. Another powerful habit is boundaries. Silently attractive people are kind, but they don't people please. They know how to say no without guilt. They don't allow others to drain their time or energy. Boundaries show self-respect, and self-respect sets the standard for how others treat us. It's not loud, but it's very clear. Next is humility. They may be brilliant, skilled, or successful, but they never have to prove it. They give credit. They take feedback. They remain teachable. Their humility doesn't shrink their presence. It expands it because it invites connection without competition. They also develop a sense of humor that doesn't seek the spotlight. They're not the class clown or the loudest laugh in the room, but their wit, timing, and warmth make others feel good around them. It's never at someone else's expense. It's light, it's kind, and it's real. Finally, they value solitude, not isolation, solitude. They're not afraid to be alone with their thoughts. They use solitude to reflect, recharge, and recalibrate. And when you can stand strong in your own presence, others will naturally want to be in it too. These habits don't need applause. They don't demand validation, but they build a quiet confidence that speaks louder than anything shouted. In a world obsessed with image, silently attractive people focus on essence. And that is what truly draws people in. 5 keynotes of the speech, true attraction is rooted in authenticity and emotional maturity, not external charm or performance. Habits like self-awareness, active listening, and emotional restraint silently build deep trust and connection. Consistency, purpose, and intention in both speech and actions establish credibility and magnetism. Maintaining boundaries, humility, and a sense of humor show strength without arrogance. Silently attractive people invest in solitude and self-respect, making them compelling without needing attention. True attraction is rooted in authenticity and emotional maturity, not external charm or performance. This idea challenges the conventional narrative that we must impress others through appearance, charisma, or constant validation-seeking behavior. Real attraction, the kind that draws people in and keeps them engaged, isn't built in the spotlight. It's cultivated quietly through a deep understanding of oneself and the ability to regulate and express emotions with care, maturity, and intention. Authenticity begins with self-awareness. It's the practice of knowing who you are, what you value, and what you stand for, even when no one's watching. Authentic people don't pretend to be someone they're not for approval. They don't follow trends just to fit in. They don't shift their personality based on the people around them. Instead, they act in alignment with their core beliefs. That doesn't mean they're inflexible or self-righteous. It means they've done the internal work of figuring out what matters to them, and they live in accordance with those principles. This consistency is powerful. It creates a stable presence that others can rely on. In a world where many people wear masks, someone who's consistently themselves becomes a breath of fresh air. Emotional maturity is another cornerstone of silent attraction. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally responsible. An emotionally mature person knows how to sit with discomfort without lashing out. They know how to express their needs clearly without manipulation. They know when to speak and when to listen. And they know how to apologize when they're wrong. These qualities are rare, but when someone embodies them, people around them feel safe. They feel seen and respected. That emotional safety is a silent magnet. It doesn't announce itself, but it is profoundly felt. There's a calm power in people who don't need attention to feel valuable. Their confidence doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being grounded in who they are. They're not addicted to approval. They don't chase validation. They know that their worth isn't determined by how many people notice them or praise them. This quiet confidence, this self-assurance that doesn't depend on external feedback, radiates strength. Others naturally sense it and are drawn to it because we all seek that kind of inner peace, even if we don't realize it. People who rely solely on charm or surface level performance might make a strong first impression, but that impression often fades. The kind of attraction that lasts, whether in friendships, professional relationships, or romantic ones, comes from depth, not flash. When someone is authentic and emotionally mature, people want to stay close to them, not just because they're interesting, but because they're trustworthy. Where you stand with them, they won't fake emotions to keep the peace or lie to make themselves look better. That kind of reliability is deeply attractive, even if it's quiet. What makes authenticity and emotional maturity so compelling is that they allow space for others to be themselves. When you're around someone who's not performing, you don't feel the pressure to perform either. You can relax, you can speak honestly, you can be vulnerable. And when people feel that level of comfort around you, they're more likely to connect with you on a deeper level. It's the kind of connection that doesn't need constant maintenance because it's built on truth and mutual respect. Another aspect of emotional maturity that enhances attraction is the ability to handle differences without turning them into conflict. Authentic people can agree to disagree. They don't need to be right all the time. They understand that someone else's opinion isn't a threat to their identity. They stay curious, not combative. That level of grace in disagreement is rare, and it signals strength of character. People notice it. They may not always say it out loud, but they feel more comfortable around someone who doesn't make every difference of opinion a battle. Also, silently attractive individuals don't compete for attention. They uplift others. They don't need to dominate a conversation to feel important. They ask thoughtful questions. They listen with presence. They celebrate other people's successes without envy. All of this communicates one simple but powerful message. I'm secure enough in myself to make space for you. That message, when delivered consistently, quietly, and without fanfare, resonates far louder than any dramatic display of confidence ever could. In the end, it's not the loudest person in the room who captures the most attention. It's the one who knows who they are, respects who others are, and behaves with consistency, calm, and kindness. That's the essence of true attraction. It doesn't need decoration. It simply needs to be lived. Habits like self-awareness, active listening, and emotional restraint silently build deep trust and connection. These are the habits that don't make noise, yet they transform relationships in powerful, lasting ways. They don't require a stage or a spotlight to be effective. In fact, they're most impactful when practiced quietly, consistently, and genuinely. At the heart of these habits is the understanding that attraction isn't about trying to impress others. It's about creating an environment where others feel safe, seen, and respected. Self-awareness is the foundation of how we relate to others. Without it, everything becomes reactionary. A self-aware person understands their emotions, patterns, triggers, and strengths. They recognize how their words and actions impact others. They don't operate on autopilot. When they enter a room or a conversation, they are present. They observe not only what's happening around them, but also what's going on inside them. This ability to observe one's own behavior without judgment builds emotional intelligence. It makes people more intentional with their communication, more considerate in their interactions, and more accountable for their actions. And when someone consistently shows that they're in control of themselves, not ruled by mood swings or impulses, it builds trust. Others feel like they're engaging with someone stable, someone thoughtful, and that makes them lean in quietly and naturally. Active listening is perhaps one of the most underrated habits of connection. In most conversations, people are not really listening, they're waiting to speak. They're formulating their reply or shifting focus to their own story. But someone who truly listens is rare and unmistakable. They give you their full attention. They don't interrupt or finish your sentences. They let you speak, and they listen not just to your words, but to your tone, your body language, and the emotion behind what you're saying. When a person listens like this, it makes others feel deeply valued. It communicates without saying a word that what you're saying matters. And that kind of presence is quietly magnetic. It's not performative. It's not about impressing. It's about connection. And when you make someone feel heard, you make them feel understood, and that's where trust begins. Then there is emotional restraint, a habit that reveals strength through calm. In emotionally charged situations, many people react. They raise their voices, get defensive, or shut down. But someone who practices emotional restraint doesn't allow the heat of the moment to hijack their behavior. They pause, they breathe, they take time to understand before they respond. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means regulating them. Emotional restraint allows a person to hold space for others, even when things get tense. It allows for difficult conversations without escalation. And it makes people feel safe even during disagreement. When someone consistently shows that they don't lose themselves in anger, ego, or anxiety, others learn that they can trust them in difficult moments. Trust isn't built through grand gestures or flowery words. It's built through the small moments when someone shows up with integrity, patience, and care. And these three habits, self-awareness, active listening, and emotional restraint, create those moments again and again. They might not be visible on the surface, but their impact is felt deeply by everyone who encounters them. When someone is consistently practicing these habits, people begin to open up around them. Walls come down. The connection grows not because they forced it, but because they created a space where it could naturally happen. What makes these habits especially powerful is that they're sustainable. They don't require constant effort to keep someone's attention. Instead, they build a strong foundation that relationships can rest on. Whether it's a friendship, a partnership, or a professional bond, these habits work quietly in the background, earning trust one interaction at a time. There's no need for manipulation or performance. Just the steady, dependable presence of someone who's emotionally tuned in and grounded. People often say they want to be around someone who is genuine, calm, and trustworthy. These are not traits you can fake. They emerge from these internal habits. They require self-discipline, reflection, and the willingness to grow. And when practiced over time, they create a kind of quiet gravity. People begin to seek out your presence, not because you're the loudest or the most entertaining, but because they feel something different around you. They feel respected, they feel heard, they feel safe. And that's the kind of silent attraction that doesn't fade. It deepens. Because it's not based on how well you perform, it's based on how well you connect. And connection built on trust will always outlast connection built on appearance or charm. Consistency, purpose, and intention in both speech and actions establish credibility and magnetism. These are not traits that scream for attention, yet their presence creates a quiet authority that naturally draws people in. In a world where behavior often fluctuates based on mood, environment, or convenience, the individual who chooses to operate with steady alignment becomes someone others instinctively trust. Consistency is one of the most powerful but often overlooked forms of attractiveness. When people know what to expect from you, not because you're predictable, but because you're dependable, they begin to lean on you, to believe in you, and to follow your lead without being asked. Consistency is not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about reliability in your character, not repetition in your actions. When someone behaves with consistency, their words match their behavior. They don't say one thing and do another. They don't make promises casually. If they commit to something, they follow through. Over time, people around them start to view them as someone who can be counted on. That builds credibility. And credibility, once earned, becomes a silent form of influence. You don't have to demand respect when your behavior has already earned it. The quiet power of consistency lies in the sense of emotional security it brings to every relationship. People trust those who show up the same way regardless of the setting, the company, or the stakes. Living with purpose amplifies this effect. Purpose is not about having every step of life mapped out. It's about moving through life with intention and meaning. A person with purpose doesn't waste their energy on distractions or superficial pursuits. They have clarity, not necessarily about every destination, but about the direction they want to go. You can see it in how they spend their time, in how they treat others, in what they choose to invest in. Purpose fuels discipline, and discipline gives a person depth. That depth makes their presence feel grounded. They don't chase validation because they're already tethered to something more meaningful. People who are internally anchored are naturally magnetic. They're not pulled in 100 directions by trends, opinions, or fear of missing out. They move differently, they speak differently, and others feel it. Intentionality in communication is another element of this silent attractiveness. Speaking with intention means choosing words that align with values, not emotions. It means not using language to control, impress, or manipulate. It means pausing before reacting. Those who speak with intention understand the weight of their words, and they treat that weight with respect. They don't talk just to fill silence or to assert dominance. When they do speak, people listen not because of volume, but because of substance. Whether it's in a moment of conflict, encouragement, or decision-making, their words are measured, honest, and rooted in integrity. This combination of consistency, purpose, and intentional speech creates an aura of trustworthiness that can't be faked. People are drawn to what feels safe and what feels meaningful. Someone who lives by these values sends a clear message without saying anything flashy. You can trust me to be who I say I am. That message, when communicated through action rather than declaration, becomes a powerful force. It's the difference between a candle that flickers in the wind and one that burns steadily through the night. The steady flame doesn't need to dance or spark to prove its strength. It simply stays lit. When someone acts with this kind of alignment, they inspire confidence not only in others, but within themselves. There is no internal conflict, no lingering doubt about whether they've said the right thing or made the right move. That inner clarity shows in their body language, in their tone, in the way they carry themselves. They walk into a room and they don't need to dominate it. Their presence speaks before they do. And what it says is, this person knows who they are and they live accordingly. This level of integrity isn't about perfection. It's about effort, reflection, and consistency. It's about showing up with the same values when it's hard as when it's easy. It's about doing the right thing when no one is watching, simply because that's who you've chosen to be. Over time, these choices build a reputation. And that reputation becomes an invisible force that draws people closer. In the chaos of inconsistency and the noise of self-promotion, someone who walks with intention and purpose will always stand out silently, powerfully, and unmistakably. Maintaining boundaries, humility, and a sense of humor shows strength without arrogance. These qualities don't require an audience to be powerful. In fact, their true value is revealed in quiet moments when no one is looking for approval and no one is trying to impress. The ability to hold clear boundaries, remain humble despite success, and bring lightness through humor without seeking attention creates a magnetic presence. This type of attraction is built not on how loudly you present yourself, but on the strength of your self-respect and your awareness of others. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls meant to push people away, but in truth, they are bridges to healthier relationships. People who maintain strong boundaries do so not out of pride or ego, but because they understand the value of their time, energy, and mental space. They know that saying yes to everything is not a virtue, it's a drain. They say no when it's necessary, not rudely, but clearly and respectfully. They don't over-explain, and they don't compromise their values for approval. This restraint is powerful. It signals that their sense of self-worth isn't dependent on pleasing everyone, and that quiet confidence naturally earns respect. People feel safer around someone who sets boundaries because it shows they are self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and won't engage in manipulative or passive-aggressive behavior. Boundaries also allow space for authenticity. When someone isn't trying to be everything to everyone, they show up as themselves. That kind of clarity is rare and deeply attractive. It demonstrates emotional maturity, the kind that doesn't need validation to feel valuable. Others sense that they won't be judged or smothered, and that there's mutual respect in the space shared with such a person. And even if they don't fully understand why, people gravitate toward that stability. It offers a kind of peace that loud charm never can. Then there is humility, a trait so often mistaken for weakness when it is, in fact, a mark of quiet strength. Humble people don't downplay their worth. They simply don't feel the need to inflate it. They acknowledge their flaws. They accept praise without becoming arrogant. They celebrate others without feeling threatened. This balance is incredibly grounding. You don't have to compete with someone who is humble because they're not competing with you. You can be yourself around them. You can relax. Humility is a form of confidence that doesn't seek comparison. It's not about being less than anyone. It's about knowing you don't have to be more. A humble person listens more than they speak. They ask questions. They admit when they don't know something. And in doing so, they create space for others to contribute, grow, and shine. That generosity of spirit is quietly powerful. It shows that the person isn't seeking the spotlight, but is willing to share it. That's rare. And it makes others feel included, not overshadowed. In a world filled with noise, someone who carries themselves with modesty and openness becomes refreshingly memorable. Adding to that presence is a sense of humor, not the kind that dominates a room, but the kind that makes others feel at ease. A silent kind of humor that doesn't rely on being loud or offensive. It's subtle, thoughtful, and often self-aware. It brings lightness without seeking applause. When someone can laugh at themselves without putting others down, it reveals comfort within their own skin. And when they use humor to lift the mood rather than steal the moment, it shows emotional intelligence. This kind of humor doesn't make people feel small. It includes them. It's never used as a mask or a defense mechanism, but as a way to connect. A well-placed comment, a warm chuckle, or a shared smile can dissolve tension in seconds. And when it's done with intention and care, it becomes a tool of connection, not a performance. Humor that doesn't seek validation is deeply attractive because it reveals a person who isn't trying to impress. They're trying to connect. And connection, not entertainment, is what we truly crave. When someone lives with these habits, holding boundaries without fear, walking humbly through both failure and success, and using humor to connect instead of control, they create an atmosphere of quiet strength. People notice. They may not always say it, but they feel it. They respect it and they trust it. These aren't loud signals, but they are strong ones. And in a world obsessed with appearances, someone who leads with respect, grace, and lightness becomes unforgettable, not because they demand attention, but because they never needed it in the first place. Silently attractive people invest in solitude and self-respect, making them compelling without needing attention. This kind of attraction doesn't emerge from how much time you spend in the spotlight or how many people praise your presence. It comes from the invisible work you do when you're alone. The work that no one sees but everyone feels. Solitude is not loneliness. It is not isolation. It is the deliberate choice to be in your own company, to sit with your thoughts, to understand your emotions, and to gain clarity without external noise. It is in those quiet moments that people develop the self-awareness, confidence, and emotional stability that later shows up as calm, grounded presence in every interaction. People who embrace solitude tend to know themselves more deeply. They are not constantly distracted by the need to be entertained or surrounded. They aren't afraid of silence. They don't fear being alone with their thoughts. In fact, they use solitude as a space for reflection, creativity, and emotional reset. They ask themselves hard questions. They look at their behavior. They examine their motives. They think about what matters. And because they take the time to understand who they are and what they value, they move through the world with a rare kind of clarity. This inner clarity shows. It shows in their decisions, in the way they communicate, in how they handle pressure, and in how they treat others. Without ever having to say it out loud, people can feel that this is someone who has done the inner work. Investing in solitude also sharpens intuition. People who spend time alone become better at listening to that inner voice, at discerning what feels right and what doesn't. They are less likely to be swayed by popular opinion or external pressure. They don't follow trends blindly or imitate others for approval. They lead themselves. And in a world where many follow the crowd, someone who walks their own path becomes silently magnetic. Others start to notice their calm, their certainty, their peace, not because they broadcast it, but because it radiates from within. Self-respect is the second force at play here, and it's deeply tied to solitude. When people take time to be alone, they often discover what they truly need and what they truly deserve. Self-respect grows from this understanding. It's not about pride or ego. It's about knowing your worth without needing someone else to define it. People who respect themselves set better boundaries. They don't tolerate disrespect. They don't settle for less than they give. They don't chase people attention or validation. Their presence says, I know my value without ever having to demand it. Self-respect also influences how people carry themselves. There's a difference between someone who's performing confidence and someone who simply possesses it. You can see it in how they walk into a room, not needing to be noticed, but impossible to ignore. Their posture is upright, their eye contact steady, their energy calm. They don't shrink, and they don't overcompensate. They're simply at peace with who they are. That peace becomes presence. And presence is far more attractive than performance. Moreover, people with self-respect are often more selective, not in a judgmental way, but in a discerning way. They don't give their time, energy, or attention lightly. They understand the value of their presence, and they don't feel the need to explain or justify their choices. When they engage with others, it's because they truly want to, not because they feel pressure to. This selectiveness increases their perceived value. Others can sense that their attention is genuine, not given out of obligation or insecurity. And that kind of authenticity is deeply compelling. What makes all of this powerful is that none of it is done to impress others. The solitude, the self-reflection, the respect, they're not part of a strategy to gain popularity. They're part of a commitment to living with integrity. And ironically, that quiet integrity becomes more attractive than any loud attempt to be seen. It creates a magnetic force around the person, drawing others in without ever needing to chase attention. People sense that being in the presence of such a person is calming, grounding, and real. In a noisy world full of constant self-promotion, there's something irresistible about someone who doesn't need to prove anything, someone who is rooted in themselves. Someone who through solitude has built strength and through self-respect has built standards. They don't need the crowd to know they're enough, they already know. And that knowing creates an energy that speaks before they do. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's deeply felt. It's the quiet power of someone who doesn't need you to like them to be whole, but whose presence makes you feel more whole yourself. The most powerful forms of attraction aren't loud, they're lived. They show up in the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are, listens with presence, and moves with intention. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about being centered within yourself. When you carry emotional maturity, consistency, humility, and self-respect, people are drawn to you, not because of what you do to impress them, but because of how you make them feel. You become someone who radiates trust, calm, and strength without needing to announce it. In a world chasing noise and validation, the ones who lead with depth, authenticity, and quiet purpose are the ones we remember, the ones we respect, and the ones we are silently to